3 judges present and accounted for. Lovely. So we can officially kick off. Well, welcome this afternoon. We are really delighted to see all of you. My name's Emily Voss. I'm the We the People coordinator for Virginia, and we're thrilled to introduce you to your Unit 3 judges. In just a second, the judges will introduce themselves, and then they'll ask you to introduce yourselves and your teacher. And then they'll go through the process I'm sure that you have dreamed of at this point. They'll read you the question, you'll give your prepared statement, and then they'll do some follow-up questions. But these folks are a lot of fun. They're looking to have a great conversation with you. So best of luck, and I'm gonna hand things over to the judges.
Don, you need to unmute.
First time I forgot.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, students. Good afternoon, teacher. It's a great honor to have you present to us today. I'm Donald Rogers. I taught history at Central Connecticut State University before I retired. I've been involved in We the People for many years. It's a great program, and I look forward to hearing your testimony.
Yeah. My name is Joe Stewart. I teach in the political science department at Clemson University in South Carolina. Very much appreciate your efforts. And as I look across the screen, I can see you put in extra effort. Every one of you's got 2 units. So I really appreciate that this year. We are better off because of that. And I'm sure you are too, although you may not have believed that sometimes when you were putting in all that work. But really do appreciate it. Relax. We're going to have fun today, and we're looking forward to learning from you.
Joe, I was noticing that too. I was thinking Unit 1, Unit 5, and Unit 6. I'd love to hear y'all on those 3 units. I wouldn't know what to ask you, but I would enjoy watching you do it. If I was a student in your school, rather than doing 2 units, I would keep asking Greg if he would put me on one. Just put me on one.
Unfortunately, we're a small school, and we these are the kids that has to be tortured some more. So
well, good for them. Good for them. You won't get tortured by us today, and if we could come to your school, we would still just be support. We'd be bringing you water while you did this. But congratulations on being able to do that. This is going to be fun. We've been looking forward to seeing you. Dr. Rogers.
So,
Mike, you might want to tell them who you are.
Oh, I don't know. I may not tell them because they cut the Broadway lights off and didn't let me come see Hamilton and the Music Man, and they've been making me wait. If y'all would turn the lights back on up there. Emma, really, you could go with me to the Music Man if you would just flip the light.
I've never been to New York City, so that would be fun.
Come meet me. I'll do it. Just bring your parents and we'll all go. Emily's gonna come. We'll all go to, I don't know which one. I've seen Hamilton, but I hadn't seen Hugh Jackman in the Music Man. So if you go to that one with me, that would be fun. That would be
so fun.
So who are you?
Mike Miles from Birmingham, Alabama, who still has my tickets to those shows. Thanks.
Very good. Students, tell us who you are.
Good afternoon. I'm Brooke Carlson.
I'm Emma Heim.
I'm Caleb Johnson. We're from Westfield Academy, and our teacher is Mr. Berner.
Very good. Good to see you all. Great. So let's have a good conversation. We're excited to hear what you're going to have to say. And so I'm going to read the question for you. And the question begins with quotation. Quote, "There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic in 2 great political parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other." Unquote. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Despite George Washington's warnings in his farewell address, political parties were formed and America divided. Today, America is at a very divided point. President Biden has stated that he wishes to restore bipartisan unity to the sacred halls of Congress. We believe that political parties are an essential part of the unwritten Constitution. However, the polarity in today's political climate has gone too far.
The divide between the Federalist and Anti-Federalist was evident in issues such as the differing in power between state and federal governments and the creation of a Bill of Rights. Later on in American history, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans differed in their views on tariffs and again in the strength of a federal government. These issues continue to be relevant today between Democrats and Republicans.
The continual struggle between state and federal governments is especially evident during today's pandemic. At the height of COVID-19 in March of 2020, many states declared a state of emergency in order to benefit from federal funding. However, these states did not want the federal government to interfere in their emergency response. Finally, the issues were left up to the states. As a result, the COVID policies differ from state to state.
The differences between parties can also be seen in the vast divide between the actions taken by the executive branch in just the past 5 years. This is one of the major disadvantages of having a polarized government. What one president does in their term, especially by executive order, can be easily undone.
This creates much uncertainty and inconsistency for the American people. Hundreds of jobs that former President Trump created in an executive order concerning the Keystone Pipeline were stripped away from Americans with the stroke of President Biden's pen.
With the advent of political parties and the breakdown of the legislative and executive branches as designed by our founders, we have fluctuated between unified and divided governments. As it is with most things in life, this too has its advantages and disadvantages. A divided government allows for more viewpoints and opinions, while still representing the minority.
A divided government is supposed to ensure agreement and compromise between majorities and minorities, especially in terms of legislation. However, some Americans fear we have lost our ability to compromise, which has led to the politicians discussing the end of the filibuster and other tools that force compromise.
On the other hand, a unified government does not respect the wishes of the minority. Take, for example, the British Parliament. Whoever holds the majority in Parliament is granted the ability to pick the Prime Minister. This ensures agreement of the legislative and the executive branch. However, not all viewpoints are heard and represented. Minority voices are cast to the wayside, and a group of people go unheard. Regardless of this, the efficiency of a unified government is unmatched. However, when it comes to making important decisions, what is more valued, rapid results or representation of the people?
Political parties have polarized the American political climate. However, we believe that although we must improve our civil discourse, having a two-party system is beneficial to democracy. A divided government holds true to the ideals of democracy by giving even the smallest minority a voice and the ability to sway legislation. America's party system ensures that every citizen is represented and upholds America's founding democratic principles of a government created of, by, and for the people.
A very nice presentation, very nicely timed. Have there been occasions in American history when the American political party system has failed to produce an effective governing system? And what lessons are there of those instances?
I think we're seeing this right now in America at the moment, especially with the Trump era being left behind and the advent of social media into our political climate. I think we're seeing a huge divide, especially as we look back on the 1.9 trillion COVID relief bill that was just passed as part of the budget reconciliation bill. There was an interview done by Newsweek with Joe Manchin, senator for West Virginia, and they asked him, is this Congress bipartisan? Is this Congress working in our democratic form? And he said, I don't think that this happens to be a bipartisan bill in Congress. And we look back on what the warnings George Washington gave us, that political parties would take away from the people and their wishes. We see him warning against political parties because of this, and bringing this back to Joe Manchin and his form. He said, I'm not sure that if this bill goes through, if there will ever be another bipartisan bill within this Senate cycle. And is this distracting from the people? Is this democracy working? Is it taking away from the people? Because the senators who are elected by the people, are they hearing the constituents? Are the voices of a democracy being represented? And it's just something that we need to reevaluate and redetermine. If no Republicans vote on a COVID relief bill, and yet the people who supported them put them into office, if they're not get it being heard. They wanted this bill, they wanted this relief. But if they don't get that, and if they're not seeing that in Congress, their voices aren't being represented. And at that point, is democracy actually working?
The government initially started off, the people in the government don't run it. It's the people as a whole, they run it. The government was created by the people and for the people, as mentioned. And at the end of the day, the people are in charge of really what happens because they can get to vote. But as Emma said, they might not always get heard. And to go off of what Emma briefly touched on with social media is making it so hard to compromise. And that is another issue that we see in today's government is people aren't willing to compromise with each other because they're stuck in their own echo chamber and don't want to listen to the other sides or research about what could be on the other sides.
Should we could look for bipartisanship as an end? That is, should we be trying to get bipartisanship just to get bipartisanship, or is that simply a means to achieving something else?
I think that if we would get, I believe that we would get to bipartisanship if we worked on our civil discourse. I think that bipartisanship is a result of civil discourse. It's a result of the minority and the majority having a say in legislation. Bipartisanship is something that we should achieve along the way. It should be something that comes from a government functioning well under the system in which it is placed. We see this a lot in the primaries when there are such left and right candidates because the people who vote in primaries are more likely to have a partisan side. A study done by Princeton found that 1 in 5 people who belong to a party come out to primaries. So there isn't a lot of people. And the study also found that the people who do come are the most polarized of the voters. And we have examples such as Marjorie Greene, who was so into conspiracy theories and 9/11 not being an actual event and school shootings being a conspiracy theory just to get placed into office. And I think that this is really primaries, and the fact that they're so polarized like this is not helping our bipartisanship. And it should be something, maybe there have been suggestions like having a open primary to other political parties so that other parties like the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, they can have a say in who gets in, and maybe that will cause more moderate and in turn hopefully lead to a more bipartisan Senate or Congress.
I was going to ask you something else, but Brooke used a phrase in her answer to Dr. Rogers a minute ago that to me is so much a part of this. When I was your age, we had daily newspapers. We don't even have that anymore. And the newspapers would have an editorial view and they would endorse candidates. And that was a lot of help to people that didn't follow it. Now, Brooke, we've got echo chambers. And depending on which dentist's office you go in or which restaurant you go in, they're either going to have Fox News or MSNBC or CNN or some other echo chamber. And one of them's going to make you resentful and say, yeah, somebody's trying to take my wealth from me, and others are going to be resentful on the other side. Do the echo chambers and social media make it almost impossible now for bipartisanship to exist, certainly in my lifetime and maybe in yours? Does that really complicate things more than it used to?
I would say the whole echo chamber thing, the internet and social media have extremely made it, a lot more difficult to dissect what is fact and what is false. And that comes into play where education is necessary. It is necessary for us to teach the youth and everyone, how to dissect these, facts from all the false and all the bogus that is put onto the internet. Because honestly, a lot of it, you can't trust. You can't trust a lot of these sites like QAnon and all these conspiracy theories that are just made up out of thin air just to have people confused and join their side and
Yeah.
just cause chaos that we don't need in our political climate today.
Caleb, there's sometimes I don't trust things that I hear in my own echo chamber, the one that I choose to listen to, and I think that can't be right. And I go look it up, and I think you're 100% right. 100% right about that. Dr. Roger.
So John Adams worried about division into two great parties. Would a multi-party system work better in the United States than the two-party system?
So, taking a look at the Electoral College and the way our elections are set up, it is really hard for us to add a third party. It is important to recognize that there are other parties, such as the Marijuana Reform Party, that has gotten a lot of sway in legislation, and they have put a lot of their 2 cents in. And we see a lot of states legalizing marijuana as a result of their lobbying and campaigning. The last big third party candidate was Ross Perot, who got 48.5 million votes in an election, which is this almost the population of Virginia and California put together. However, he didn't win any electoral college votes. With the way our elections are set up and our primaries are structured, it would be so hard to add a third party into the mix. I think it's us at this point, it's a matter of us finding the balance between here letting the minorities be heard and not the majority shutting them out, as was warned about in Federalist 10.
Okay, thank you very much. So that was a very a nice presentation. Good discussion. I think you hit all the parts of the question very adequately. Good examples. I think your point about social media, as my colleague Mike Miles points out, it's a very important consideration. You might have amplified that a little bit more to consider how the function of political parties has changed. I mean, at one point, one of the functions of the original political parties was to inform the voters. This is particularly true in the Jacksonian period. And political parties were affiliated with newspapers, who, they were engaged as much in false news as we do today. But the parties had a different function, and you might argue that social media has sort of taken over that function and complicated the party system. So that might have been something you could have expanded on. But again, a very good presentation, and again, you hit the parts of the question well.
Yeah, I agree. I very much enjoyed your presentation and wish we'd had a little bit more time. I would have liked to have teased out some of the things that you talked about, but that we didn't have time to deal with. You talked about the divided government in terms of the executive and legislative branches. Should we be considering the courts? There is that third branch of government there, and to what extent should we or should we not consider them in those discussions? When do we get compromise, and when do we get gridlock when we have divided government? It would be nice to be able to figure that out. On your idea of polarization, let me give you an analogy that I think might be helpful for you, because I thought you did a very good job of discussing it and reminded me of this. Think of it is the party structure, is public opinion in this country more like a football or a barbell? That is, do we have that kind of where everything's in the middle, or do we have the weights on either end and not much in between? If you believe that we're so polarized we can't get anything done, then we've got a barbell. Traditionally, we've always thought of political discourse as a football with the big bulge in the middle. The good news is I am confident that you are well equipped to help us move beyond where we are with this now. And I appreciate your efforts on this. Thank you.
I love listening to the two of them too. I learned something from the three of you, and I learned something from the two of them every time they analyze it. This has been a fun day, and you made it more fun. Two thoughts. One of them is, Caleb, I think the echo chamber is going to get worse. I think they make so much money, the echo chambers do, that we'll see more and more of them, and they'll factionalize, and it's going to be as confusing as campaigns can be before election day with all of that. Now that they've seen how much money they can make off of it and how much confusion they can cause, that, you know, and one side always says this about the other, but it's true both sides. They're propaganda machines. They're not there to enlighten, they're there to persuade. And it's going to be harder, I think, for the three of you to sort this out than it ever was for Dr. Rogers or Dr. Stewart and me. We didn't have that kind of noise that we had to pick through to do that. Also, you're fortunate to live in a state where there are multiple parties, more than in my state. We were talking a little while ago, a man ran for mayor, John Lindsay ran for mayor a number of years ago in New York City, and he was the nominee of the Democratic Party. He was the nominee of the Republican Party, and Dr. Rogers was at the Libertarian. He was a nominee of three parties. You remember what the third one was? I can't remember.
I do not know.
But he was nominee of three. I think he won. I know he won because he was the nominee of all three parties. My state, that would not be possible. You did such a great job today that I'm very pleased to announce that Greg will be bringing all three of you with him to New York City, and Emily's going to get tickets for the 8 of us, and we'll all go see Hamilton and the Music Man. And Greg, that's so nice and thoughtful of you to do that for us. Thank you.
That's so nice, Mr. Berner.
I appreciate you throwing me under the bus. I've decided I got to get some kind of We the People background after watching you two. So I've got
Yeah,
some.
go get you one of those. You've earned it, buddy. I guarantee you, you've earned it. You have earned